Attractive teachers of Reddit. Did you know which students had a crush on you? And what is the strangest or most inappropriate thing you overheard said about you? Please like, subscribe and comment so I can create more videos for you. French teacher here. Teenagers are just constantly inappropriate and need very little encouragement. I got asked to prom. Had boys tell other teachers that they thought I was hot. Had a parent accusingly tell me that she now understood why her son loved French, which I took to mean that my innovative skill set had inspired him. I didn't mind though. It meant that I had a class with 12 previously disengaged 16-year-old boys come back for extra homework and revision classes every lunchtime and after school, and every one of those bags of hormones passed. I use the crushes students have on me for their own good too. You want to hang out with me? Sure. Let's go to the library during lunch to work on your assignment. You want to know what impresses me in a man? Good work ethic and good grades. Cue them actually working hard on an assignment and handing it in on time. When I was in junior high, there was a guy who I honestly couldn't tell where he stood in the popularity hierarchy, but he always thought he was hot shit. Well, we got an influx of 24-26-year-old female teachers which he, for the most part, hit on, which he was flatly denied. He didn't take no for an answer and proceeded to sexually harass and then assault two of the teachers. Not sure what he said, but he grabbed one's ass and tried to dry hump the other. Young male middle school teacher here. I know quite a few of them who have a crush on me. There's a new fad where they tell each other secrets and say "oh, exposed." Since when did snitching become popular? Anyway, I always get told, who has a crush on me? And quite often some of the girls will drop by to leave their athletic bags, or instruments, etc. in the classroom, and they bring their friends in with them. When they leave, I always hear comments like, "I wish I had him as my teacher." My top 3 worst incidents. 1. I had a girl come in at lunch. She told me, "Mister, I like you." Knowing full well what she meant, I tried to play it off and said as nonchalant as I could, "I like you too. You're a great student." She was like, "No, I mean I really like you." I couldn't believe the tenacity. 2. Another student asked me to take a picture with her towards the end of the school year. I obliged, and on the last day she printed it out and gave it to me with her Instagram on the back and a message about how cute I was. 3. A girl found my Facebook and saved my profile picture as the background to her phone. I deleted my Facebook promptly afterward. If only I could get that kind of attention from girls my own age. Looks like you gotta stick an enchanted ring in your ass. NSFW. Oglaf webpage. Oh lord, before my breast reduction I was a timid tay with 34H boobs at a high school. Surprisingly, it was girls I heard most of the comments from. Guys mostly just stared. Anyway, the worst, and certainly weirdest, was when I was watching over a homeroom and pretended not to hear a group of girls talk about a rumor that I had let several male students tit fuck me one after another, and because my boobs were so big I guess the cum pulled up in my cleavage, and in the end I sucked it all out with a straw. Yeah. More than anything, I was amused by how they thought tit fucking worked. Among several personal questions was, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And once a student called me honey. It's especially icky because they are just 8th graders. Edit. I feel obliged to defend my students given the general character of anecdotes featured in this thread. None of my kids are unscrupulous little sex-crazed monsters or pre-skanks or anything. The subject and method by which I teach is by necessity more personal and social than typical, and so there's bound to be a girl here or there that crushes on teacher a little bit. They're good kids. Finally, an askReddit question I can answer. I'm not much to look at now, but in the mid-90s I was a much handsomer fellow. I was working at a Catholic high school at the height of my best hairstyle and my size 28 waist. Those are both gone now. The first day I started, a group of giggling teenage girls were huddled and whispering and looking at me. One of them worked up the guts to come over to me and say hello. "So one question please." Just, she was blushing, "Are you married?" So yeah, a bunch of 16-year-old girls were hoping I was single. What they thought they'd do if I was, I'm not sure, but they were crushing. One day I'm walking down a long hallway at the school and was vaguely aware of a group of girls behind me whispering. I didn't realize they were focused on me until I heard one say, "Look at his butt." I stopped without turning around, and they burst into loud embarrassed laughter and then scattered like cockroaches when the light turns on. Now, in 2017, I look like the poster from About Schmidt. But I had my day once upon a time. On my first day as a middle school intern, one of my students told his friends, "Miss Turnoff Century is mine." I walked behind his seat right as he said it and he just about died from embarrassment when he figured out that I heard him. One of my high school students told me that my intelligence was sexy. That was one of those moments where you look for another adult who can verify, for any potential future accord, that you weren't just creeping on that particular student. I'm a student teacher and was asked if I was an 8th grader by a student in my first week teaching. Which doesn't make me attractive, but it does make me seem more age appropriate for my middle schoolers. I work with kids with special needs and I knew that one of the boys, nonverbal, had hit puberty when he came over to me and gently kissed my forearm and then made his happy noise. It's kinda like a shha, which led to a new rule that we don't kiss teachers. It was kinda cute though. He's not one for affection in general. He came over to me and gently kissed my forearm and then made his happy noise. It's kinda like a shha, lol. This made me laugh so hard. Very cute. Kids or young adults thinking that an older authority figure is attractive is fairly normal and common, but it can get creepy if it gets too close. I had a young teenaged boy get a little too informal familiar with me when emailing me over time, as students can do if they need to. He ended up sending me a picture of an anime character, who had the same hair color as me, wearing a small bikini. He commented that he liked the show series she was from because he thought I looked a lot like her. Brakes gotta be slammed right there. Or you were his waifu, you know when he gets hair on his neck, he's old enough. I'm a primary school teacher. The girls will just come and find reasons to be close to you. Stand next to you and lean into you. Try to lock arms, hug you, etc. They'll say that they really like you. They try to touch my beard too. I go to the gym a lot and am starting to get decent looking body. They ask me to show them my muscles or if I have a six-pack, etc. That can get pretty weird. One time a girl brought in a plastic rose for me on Valentine's Day. That was the sweetest one and I've actually still kept that. Funnily enough, it's the only thing I've ever received on Valentine's Day. I'm not a teacher, and I may be too late to the party for this. But when I was in high school there was one particular male coach who got lots of female attention. Girls would come by his classes just to say hello, they'd stop and hug him in the hallway. Sometimes get in trouble just to get put in detention because he oversaw that for a while. Just being around witnessing this shit was crazy to me because I had never, and still to this day have never again, seen girls just throwing themselves at a guy and fawning all over him. It was like this coach was a goddamn rock star. Later when I was in college I learned that he went to jail for banging like all of them. I'm not bad. And frequently the youngest female teacher my students have ever had. I teach middle school. So 13-15 or 16. It's funny. The boys that actually have a crush are super obvious about it but they just act embarrassed and think they are hiding it well. Lol number. The most inappropriate comments I've gotten to my face are, "Come to Love Hotel with me, Japan. Love Hotel equals pay by the hour. What position do you like?" And just a straightforward, "Have sex with me." All of those several times in both English and Japanese. Shut those down real quick. Overheard comments. Mostly they just talk about my boobs lol. Edit. Some details. Former English teacher here. When I was student teaching, I carpooled with another guy, a Spanish student teacher. We both went on to graduate and taught for a while before both leaving the profession for different reasons. But, I remember kids talking about him. Don't get me wrong. He was a good-looking guy. But when we co-taught a class, we introduced ourselves to the 7th grade English class. It was my class first, Spanish was next period. It quickly got out of hand. I'm Mr. Bookworm 5000. This is Mr. Spanish teacher. We are from local college of college stuff and will be here for the next few months as your student teachers. The cooperating teacher was just watching from the back. I like video games, books, movies, and cooking. My buddy said some stuff about himself. Do you guys have any questions for us? All the boys raised their hands to ask what my favorite video game was. All the girls raised their hands to ask him. 1. Does he have a girlfriend? 2. How many push-ups he can do? 3. How do you grow your beard to look so nice? At this point, the cooperating teacher stepped in. Spanish boy and I had a beer after school and fucking laughed a lot. I was not attractive, but freshman girls still crushed on me when I taught at uni as a grad student. I would have thought they were just flirting for grades, but they were always the nerdy, hot type that already earned good grades. One called me doctor, told her I didn't have a PhD. Called me prof, I told her I was just an instructor. She asked if she could call me professor anyhow, then she asked if I'd like to get a drink. Told her to ask again when the class was over if she was serious. She called me professor. It was a really great score for a guy who looks like a catcher's mitt. I wouldn't say I'm attractive, but being at Tang College a lot of girls get flirty for favorable grades. Some try harder than others. Then during office hours right before the final, girls will be coming in with push-up bras and tiny shorts like that's going to work. Once I subbed for my buddy's high school class and one of the girls sat front row center giving me the fuck me eyes the entire hour. It was a little uncomfortable. The most inappropriate thing I've overheard said about me wasn't sexual, but rather about my military experience, just spreading untrue rumors. I used to teach high school math in New York and a good college friend of mine taught high school chemistry in Florida for a couple of years. He's a pretty good looking dude. We used to swap stories but he has one much better than all of mine. One Valentine's Day after school was over he returned to his science classroom to find a card on his desk. On the inside was written, "I want to periodically bang you on this table." Also there was a small bag of cocaine inside the card. Naturally he chopped it up on his desk and did the whole bag. Just kidding, he went straight to the principal's office and gave him everything. Naturally he chopped it up on his desk and did the whole bag. What? Just kidding, he went straight to the principal's office and gave him everything. Oh. Okay, 2 stories. 1. One of my friends who is a bit awkward would always say "I love you" to an attractive teacher typically once or twice a week. At first she would react to it by saying things like "What? Why? Stop it." Then her actions became a bit less noticeable and during the last week of school she said it back and his face lit up like you wouldn't believe. 2. A male student 18 and female teacher 22 met in school and later got married, so that was a thing. Your teacher from 1. Probably wanted to give your friend a good memory before leaving. So not me because I A. am not attractive and B. teach in an elementary school, but I have watched students do so throughout my high school and college career. I've witnessed this. The worst was in college with my theory teacher. He was 29 and a couple of the other girls had huge crushes on him. Sometimes staff would attend the parties and one girl in particular would sit on his lap and flirt shamelessly. To be fair, I think they actually dated secretly for a bit. Was a student with a very attractive teacher. She was maybe 25 or so when I was a freshman and all of the guys talked about her constantly. She always kept the door to her classroom locked during lunch, and one day me and 2 other kids were waiting outside for her to unlock the door. I was waiting there because I was lame, but the other 2 kids were friends who were talking about her. Okay, so this conversation took place like 10 years ago, but here is about how it went. God, Miss Blank is so fucking hot. I know, right? No, seriously. No, man. No, but seriously, if she was here right now I'd bend her over. And he then proceeded to mime spanking her by literally spanking the door while we stood there. I guess like any kid who doesn't understand sex might be prone to do. I was maybe 3 feet away and not really sure whether to smile and play along or be horrified, and as he spanks the door a 4th or 5th time, Miss Blank actually opens the door from the inside. She looked at all three of us and said, "You boys need to learn not to talk so loud." And then we just went in and sat down. All in all, not a bad outcome actually, but I still wonder what was really going through her mind. Finally, something I can answer. I teach junior and senior high school as a substitute teacher. I graduated a year ago, so haven't landed a full-time position yet. I've had multiple grade 10 students write inappropriate comments on my formal evaluations given out during the last day of my final student teaching practicum. These included, "I want to have sex with me's. Teacup grid miss teacup grid is hot sexy cute I want to fuck you." All caps for extra emphasis. During my first student teaching practicum, I had a grade 9 student, who was a good foot taller than me, block me from leaving the doorway when he repeated asked for a hug. I had another grade 9 student slap my ass. I was so surprised I honestly didn't know how to handle it. Teaching is fun. Out of curiosity, how did you handle it? As in, I hope you didn't let him off light. A student raised his hand while we were going over homework in class, and said, "Miss, I have a question." I said, "Let's hear it." He pulled out a boombox from under his desk, pressed play and stood up on the desk. Just as he did, Backstreet Boys' All I Have to Give came on, and with his arms outstretched he asked, "Will you go to prom with me?" I turned so red I had to walk out of the room. It's pretty obvious when a student has a crush on you. If they're not doing something like this, they are blushing and struggling to get a sentence out when you're working with them in class. I was a building sub for a high school last year. There's one girl in particular that springs to mind. She would find out where I was subbing for the day and drop by a couple of times. One day, after passing her in the hallway and saying, "Good morning," I very loudly heard, "My God, he's so fine." Ignored it and kept on my way. Another time, she came to talk to me in between classes and I told her to get going before she was late. She walked to the door, stopped and said, "By the way, Mr. Chocolate of Fizz. No homo, but you have a nice butt," and walked away. Definitely made sure to keep my distance after that. Wife is an attractive teacher. She can definitely tell which students have a crush on her. High schoolers are not subtle. She was asked to be a +1 to somebody's wedding once. Then the student reminded her the law was after 90 days post graduation they could date. Also, when the guys find out she's married, they ask only the polite questions and give non-committal "that's nice" responses to the answers. The student reminded her the law was after 90 days post-graduation they could date. The kid did his research. Not me, but my friend got so embarrassed. Basically, our English teacher is an absolute babe and she was walking towards us on the way to class, and I say to my friend really loudly, "Hey X, what do you think of Y?" And he goes, "Oh my God, she's an absolute babe. She's practically perfect. I would love to be her Phi and K." And I pissed myself laughing, and when he turned around he sees her and goes blood red. Man, I'm near certain he made the cross with his hands. Ms. Y just winked at him and said, "Morning boys." I mean, at least he didn't say how much he wanted to fuck her or anything. That's pretty complimentary if you ask me. He wasn't disrespectful or anything. As far as middle school high school compliments can go when talking about a hot girl at is. Had this 7th grade English teacher working in my middle school. She was young, like 22, going to spring break parties type of young. Well, one day some kid was distracted during class. Apparently, from what he and other guys said, was that she didn't bring a bra to school. Though that one kid was mostly distracted looking at her breasts than paying attention. Later on during the lecture she went over there to talk to him and he just kept staring while she talked. He ended up getting relocated to another school. My sister is an attractive and overly nice 24-year-old teacher, grade 7, so it definitely happens a lot. Last semester she started noticing stuff going missing from her desk, like her sports bra from her gym bag, but thought it must just be her carelessness. About a week later, her boyfriend, also a teacher, noticed her light was on and went to go check. He found one of her students, belt unbuckled, standing in front of her pair of heels that he rooted through her desk drawer to find. Now if that wasn't creepy enough, you have to know her feet stank. Like I lived her for 18 years. It was like mayonnaise and tuna broiling out in the summer Sunday. Still don't understand that kind of desperation. Well, I'm not attractive, or a teacher, or even a student anymore. I went to high school in the 80s. In my junior year, about 1985, I had study hall in the afternoon. It was in the school cafeteria, and we were assigned seats, which were lunch booths. I sat in a booth with two other guys. I was pretty nerdy, so was the other kid whom I was friendly with. He went on to get a doctorate in physics. Dart. And there were a couple of cute girls behind us. This was the study hall where I came up with the song Calculator in My Pocket Makes Me Horny that I serenaded to them. But this is not that story. Anyhow, the other guy of the three of us had a crush on the teacher monitor assigned to the class. She was pretty young, probably about 24-25 years old. He used to stare at her and talk about how hot she was. Like not quiet, so that only us two could hear. But fairly loud so that she could hear. And he used to like to go up and talk to her whenever he could. One day he started making jokes about how it must be real cold today. Not knowing what he was talking about, I asked him. And he said, loud enough, that her nipples were erect. And kept on talking about how hot she was, and about her nipples. I was a fairly obnoxious nerd, but he started really creeping me out. Soon after, he was no longer in that study hall with us. I ended up running into him years later. Like around 1998. Not sure how he recognized me, but I was picking up some Chinese food and so was he. Found out after high school he joined a seminary and was becoming a priest or reverend or some other religious pursuit. Go figure. I'm an attractive female high school teacher and OMG do I ever hear stuff said about me. They don't seem to realize how much their voices carry. The one that amused me the most just seemed to not make sense. The boys were waiting for the bell to ring and I was at my desk using my computer. Students assume when you are using a computer you are sucked into some kind of vortex where your ears don't work. They were talking about how hot I was and one kid said, yeah, I'd love to cover her in chocolate sauce and rage fuck her. I had so much trouble not laughing. As a college prof, I try not to know. Unfortunately, I have blocked out any really inappropriate comments. But I do have two stories for Reddit. 1. I got a love letter from a student. It was the last day of the semester, and this was a 101 non-program class. He was not in my program, so I'd never teach him again. It read like a stalker letter, I've been watching you, and at the end of it, he asked me out. I think he meant well, but for me it was creep level 10. I took it directly to HR. Since I was an adjunct at the time, they literally said you can say yes if you want. I sputtered out an nope nope or similar. Maybe even left them with the letter, lol. I ran out of there since the HR rep was chirping about how sweet it was. 2. Had a student get expelled because he did threaten me. He said, over email, it was adorable how awkward I was and that I didn't have to be so nervous. I was like, I'm not nervous, I'm just like that, and I realize he was being complimentary, but I prefer to keep on the topic of curriculum. He wrote a freaking diatribe back, including commenting on how I dressed. When they took his badge, he scared the DAA and security so much that they gave me mace and stationed someone outside the class afterwards. Incidentally, both stories occurred in the same 101 course, different sections, years apart. I'm not a teacher but I think this is still relevant. We had an annual tradition of end of year skits in my program in high school. The skits revolved around roasting the teachers for their quirks. There was no holding back because teachers involved were chill with us, advanced program students who liked learning, and occasionally it went too far. One year we had a new teacher, who was smoking hot, and couldn't come up with things to mock her about. All we could do was try to joke about how nice she is and some meta jokes about how hard it is to make fun of her. It turns out one group created a good line to use for her. In his most racist Asian accent, he was Asian himself. One guy looks her straight in the eyes and says, "Are you sure you teacher? 'Cause damn girl." At this point the room was howling with laughter, all the guys were agreeing with him, and this teacher turned beet red. Her face never truly stopped blushing after that one. Great teacher though. Not the attractive teacher anymore, but 10 or so years ago when I was younger and hotter. Walking down the corridor, on the way to my office, when I overheard the girl in front of me remark, "Yes, I have the two hottest teachers next." Being the asshole that I am, knowing I was one of them, I asked her who they may be. She didn't back down, looked me straight in the eye and told me that it was me and one of my good mates. I still recount this story regularly amongst my teacher friends, recalling the good old days when I still had my looks. I was an orientation counselor for incoming students during the summers at my school. I'm a good looking guy. Back then I was in the gym every day, too, and I'm personable, smart, etc. The other counselors pegged me as most likely to bang a freshman, and their jokes were non-stop throughout training. I was also the arts counselor, so I was getting all of the incoming actors, designers, dancers, cheerleaders, etc. Basically all of the stereotypical hot girl majors fell under my purview. Anyway, every single session at least one of my students would make a pass at me. Not always a girl. Before you ask, no, I didn't bang any of my freshmen. Some of the come-ons were really weird, like one girl kept telling me I had nice hands and it looked like I had strong fingers. Another girl asked me if I thought her boobs were fake and if I wanted to find out. Obviously they were real, but I wouldn't have minded checking. Except, of course, that I'm a goddamn professional and wouldn't do that to a poor, impressionable freshman. Dart. One guy said that since we were both in college now we should experiment. I shit you not. The best was a junior transfer student I had. She was crazy hot to the point where all of the other male counselors found excuses to constantly visit my group that session. When she walked up on the very first day, boobs practically bursting out of her shirt, short plaid schoolgirl skirt kicking up, she said, "I swear to God, I'm only here because I have to be to get my scholarship. I'm not gonna fuck you." Color me shocked. I had really no response to that, so I just kind of stammered okay. And then quickly turned and walked over to another counselor. I'm sure she found it hilarious. 2 days later at the end of the session, everyone was saying goodbye, and she writes her number on a post-it and says, "Remember that thing I said when we met on the first day?" They were both lies. And then she walked away. God damn. And then in the intervening 2 weeks between the end of that session and the start of school year, I guess she got back with her ex-boyfriend, because we never got together. Brutal. Other than that one girl, I always made a point of being very professional, thanking the crushers for being so flattering but no thanks, etc. Fast forward to a few years later, I and every one of my students from that time have graduated. I had this weird streak of like 5 or 6 of the girls who had crushes on me back then randoming showing up at a bar I frequented, telling me how much of a crush I was. One used the term dream conquest, and then coming back to my place. So it all worked out swimmingly in the end. This comment will get buried, but, wow, back in my younger days when I was a teacher, the 9th and 10th grade girls at the international school where I taught hit on me all the time. At the beginning, I was pretty clueless about it. Never occurred to me that 14-16-year-old girls were going to do that. I was around 28 years old, single, athletic, and good looking, but that was many years ago. A few of the girls were relentless, a few were stunners, but I was never tempted. For those of you who look at 15-year-olds and think, yeah, I'd hit that, you have never heard them talk. I enjoy being around them. But, number. They used to come sit with me at lunch and in the hallways. They would either give you that blurry, I'm fucking you in my dreams look, or they would kind of stumble from brain freeze. The most brazen one just rubbed her hands on my chest and stared into my eyes. No joke, her name was Barbara Jean, but she was known as BJ. Okay, I did give her a second thought, but, number. I was an English teacher in a training school back in my country, and my students were either teenagers or not older than 21, 22. I was a year or two older from them, so most of the girls in my classes were attracted to me. Relationship with students was a big no for me. But once, one of the students got my number somehow, and texted me late at around 11 wishing me a good night. I didn't text her back, and instead looked up her name from records, and apparently she was one of the most attractive and smartest students of my classes. The next day at night she texted me again wishing a good night, so I said what the hell and texted her back, "We are getting married in coming August." I don't consider myself attractive, but my third year teaching I remember running late to get to my 8th period class on the first day of school. I am pretty short so I typically blend in with the students. On this particular day I remember wearing black pants and a blue sweater, so I blended in even more. Anyways, the 30-second alarm had just buzzed, so everyone started bolting for whatever door they needed to get to. I was rushing but I knew that one of the TAs would already be there with the students, so I wasn't running for the door. I was maybe 50 feet away when I heard 2 8th graders say, "Damn girl, you fine, and girl, what's your name?" I didn't think too much of it because I figured they'd get in a classroom before I could turn around. Right then I heard, "Damn ma, you got a nice ass. Bet you got a pretty face." That's when I turned around. I was in front of my door, and one of them said finally, "What's your name?" To which I responded, "Are you going in this classroom?" After they both nodded, I signaled for them to come in. Once they were in I walked in, set my books down on my desk, and introduced myself. The look of pure horror on their faces was priceless. They got a referral for sexual harassment, and when they spoke to the counselor, they begged to change classes. I only saw them once or twice after that.